Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. I welcome you all to your next session of the Target Prelims 2022 crash course that we have been running live on our YouTube channel. I hope you are one of those thousands of students who have been watching all these classes every single day from 7:30 till 9:30 p.m. Today's session will be on important government schemes. We have a couple of sessions on the same topic. Today and tomorrow, we will be discussing about the most relevant and the most important government schemes that have been in the news in the past 1 year and some of the other schemes which were in the news even earlier than that. As you know, in this crash course, we have been covering the current affairs of the last 365 days of each and every subject. We have also been trying to cover some of the important topics of over an year ago. So do join us for each and every session. Also, this is an absolutely free of cost crash course. Every serious IAS aspirant is free to come join this and take advantage of this. The only thing that we expect from you is your complete sincerity, you liking the video, sharing it with the other aspirants that you know, and also leaving a comment about how did you find the session, and also let us know your scores. Do mark yourself with each and every question here, calculate your score, and at the end of the video, do let us know in the comment section how much did you score and what did you learn new from this particular class. Now, without any further ado, let's begin today's session. As I said earlier, the session today, we will be covering the most important government initiatives taken by the government in the last year or so. Now, in reading any of the government schemes, there are certain important factors that you have to keep in mind. What exactly are the facts that you have to remember about government schemes? First, the implementing agency. Implementing agency as in which exact ministry or which department is the one that has been given the responsibility to run this particular initiative. Second most important fact about any government scheme is the target audience. For example, just to tell you, when you talk about Manrega, the target audience of Manrega is people living in the rural areas who are willing to do unskilled manual labor. So every government scheme has a specific target. The Indradhanush vaccination program, for example, is specifically targeting the children, specifically covering those children who are at risk of those diseases. So what exactly is the target audience for a particular scheme? Thirdly, is there any target that we have set in our mind, or is there any deadline for any particular scheme? As long as you remember these 3 pointers of the relevant government schemes, you are very much covered with all the important initiatives that the government of India has taken in the past year or so. Now let's begin with these questions, and as I requested to you earlier, do keep marking the answer for every question and see for yourself if you are able to answer these questions and how many are you actually able to answer. This is the first question for today evening. Consider the following statements with regards to Shafri Scheme. Now, Shafri is a very interesting word and I'll explain it to you a bit later. First statement. Shafri is a Sanskrit word that means superior quality of fishery products suitable for human consumption. Second, the scheme aims to certify hatcheries and farms that adopt good aquaculture practices. Third, the scheme has been developed by Marine Products Exports Development Authority, that is MPEDA. Which of the 3 given statements is or are correct about the Shafri scheme? The correct answer here is D. All these 3 given statements are correct. Now, if you have been following the current affairs, you would realize the fact that the government of India has taken multiple initiatives, especially to help those people who are trying to make a living with related to fishery related products. So the people who are taking up aquaculture, the people who are taking up fisheries, the government of India has taken up multiple initiatives in that regard. One of those initiatives is the Shafri scheme. Now the word Shafri is a Sanskrit word that means superior quality of fishery products. Now let me give you another interesting fact. Do you know which fishery product does India export in the largest quantity in the entire world? That is frozen shrimp. So of all the products that India exports in terms of fisheries to the world, frozen shrimps is the product that comes at the top of the list. Now the problem is with fishery products and other products such as chicken, meat, etc., there has been a problem that there are allegations that while these kind of products are made, they are actually infected. A lot of antibiotics go into them, a lot of illegal chemicals are inserted into their bodies so that their weight becomes more and they are then sold at a higher price. So the nations outside India, in Europe mostly, they have been very concerned about the quality of fishery products that are coming from India. In past few years, a lot of Indian export consignments have even been rejected by the developed nations, especially because it said that the quality of these products is not up to the mark. So in order to avoid that situation from happening again, this is what the government of India has done. So government has said that when we would be exporting these fishery products, we will certify them, we will check them for any chemicals, any illegal medicines that they should not have. After checking them, we will certify them whether or not is it a good quality product or a bad quality product, and only after that you can go ahead and export it to the outside world. That is what this scheme is. The second is also correct. As I said, this is to certify the farms that adopt good practices for such kind of exports. Third also is correct. This has been developed by Marine Products Exports Development Authority. Now I have a question for you. This agency, that is Marine Products Exports Development Authority, can you tell me this comes under which particular ministry of the government of India? And when I'm asking a question, I want you to think in your mind, can you actually tell this answer? This particular authority comes under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So it is the Ministry of Commerce and Industry of the Government of India that has this particular authority which runs this particular initiative, that is the Shafri Scheme. So this was the first question regarding the government schemes. Question 2 of today evening. Consider the following statements with regards to Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, FCRA as it is called. Number 1, an FCRA registration is mandatory for all the foreign NGOs operating in India. Statement number 2, all NGOs seeking foreign donations have to open a designated FCRA account at the State Bank of India's New Delhi branch. Third, FCRA registrations are valid for a period of 3 years. Now in this particular question, you have to choose the statements which are not correct. While you're answering questions even in your test series, do make it a habit to read the question very carefully. Is the question asking you to choose a correct statement, or is the question asking you to choose an incorrect statement? Because there have been a lot of instances where you might know the correct answer, but you would anyways not be able to mark the correct answer because you overread this single word. So in this question, you had to choose the incorrect statements. Let's look at the statements one by one. First, an FCRA registration is mandatory for all foreign NGOs. Is it right? No. So the fact is that FCRA registration is mandatory for those NGOs in India who require foreign donations. So if there is an NGO in India that needs foreign donations or money coming in from outside India, for them it is mandatory to have an FCRA registration. So first statement is wrong. Second, all NGOs seeking this kind of a donation would have to open a designated branch as SBI's New Delhi branch. This is actually correct. Now over here some of you might have a confusion. What do you mean by a New Delhi branch? So if you look at entire Delhi, there is a specific area of Delhi that is called New Delhi. So in that specific area, the SBI has a branch. So the law says that in that particular branch, you have to open up your account because the government wants to keep a track of how much money are you getting from outside and how are you utilizing that. And the best way for the government to keep a track of all that money is to ensure that the money comes in from one single bank account or from one single branch. That is why it is mandatory that you have to open up your bank accounts in that particular branch only. Now, also the very obvious question would be, let's say I'm in Bangalore, or let's say I am in Trichy, or I'm in Calcutta, and I have an NGO who wants to get foreign donations. Do I have to come all the way to Delhi to get this account open? So State Bank of India has clarified you don't have to come all the way to Delhi. what you can do is submit the papers to the SBI branches which are nearby, and then they will take care of the rest of the process. But the eventual account will have to be opened up at this specific branch only. So second statement is correct. Third statement is FCRA registrations are valid for a period of 3 years. This is actually wrong. This is 5 years. Meaning that even if your NGO does get the FCRA registration, that you have registered yourself and you can now take foreign donations, even then it is only valid for a period of 5 years. So after every 5 years, you have to go to the Government of India again and then ask for registration once again. So that is how the FCRA law works. Now all of you know the reason why FCRA has been in the news, not just in the last 12 months, but in the last few months, because the Government of India has been taking up a lot of actions against several NGOs, which the government thinks are illegally using these funds, or they are using these funds against the national interest of India. Let me give you a very simple example. Let's assume the Government of India makes a plan that we have to build a big dam. And to build a big dam, what do you have to do is essentially you need a large area. So the government would need to displace a lot of people. Thousands and lakhs of people would have to leave their houses, they would be settled somewhere else. So what happens in these cases, some NGO comes to these people and says, no, you don't vacate the house, we will fight on your behalf against the Government of India. We will ask for more money. And a lot of these times, these NGOs are getting funds from outside India. So how the Indian government views these NGOs is that these NGOs are trying to stop the development of India. So the Indian government does not appreciate the fact that foreign money coming into India is used against India's national interest, and that is why the government keeps a very, very keen eye on NGOs who are taking money from outside. Let me ask you one more add-on question to here only. Let's assume that I have an NGO and I want to get funding from outside India. For some reason, I don't have the FCRA registration. Now my question is, can I still take the money? Or even if I have to take 1 rupee, or even if I have to take 100 rupees, do I still need to get the FCRA registration done? So the answer here is a figure that is 25,000. As per this particular law, if you are getting money from outside India, less than 25,000, then it is not considered as a foreign donation. In other words, even without the FCRA registration, you can get 25,000 rupees from outside India. But if you are getting a donation in excess of 25,000, then the FCRA registration becomes mandatory. Also, this particular law is overlooked by the Home Ministry. So do remember that as well. Because the internal law and order of the country is the responsibility of the Home Ministry. So they are the ones who look into this law and see the implementation of the FCRA. Okay, do remember this. One more interesting fact about FCRA before I move on to the next question. Let's take this example. Let's say I have an NGO and I got a foreign donation of 1 lakh rupees from America, and the person who gave me the money said that please use this money for education purposes. Means please go and teach poor children of India, please go and sponsor someone's education. So the person gave money to me or my NGO for education specifically. Now if I get 1 lakh rupees from outside for a specific purpose and I am using it for education, I am also making some expense as the NGO. I am going to the bank, I am taking out the money, I am going to that kid, giving him or her the education. So I also deserve some cut in this. So the question that I have is there a maximum cut or maximum commission that the NGO can take from this money in the name of administrative expenses? Let's think about it. The question is, if I get some money as foreign donations for a specific purpose, me as the NGO, how much money can I take from this as my administrative expenses? The answer to this is in the law. This is 20%. So 20% is the maximum that I can take from this in the name of administrative expenses. Because a lot of NGOs misuse this, as well. They take a lot of money from outside India, they don't use it for the correct purposes, they use it for their own liking. That is why the government has put a limit of that. All these facts you have to remember about the FCRA. Moving on, one more fact about FCRA. these are some of the categories who are not allowed to have FCRA registrations. So there are some people or there are some categories where you cannot have FCRA registration. For example, if you are involved in some unfair activities, if you are involved in violent activities, if your work goes against public interest, etc. If you are obviously working against the interests of the country, then you will not be allowed to register yourself under the FCRA. Next question is this. Operation Pangea, recently in the news, is an international effort to disrupt the online sales of counterfeit and illicit health products, ancient artifacts, endangered species, or counterfeit vaccines. Operation Pangea. Now the interesting part is this operation did not start very recently. It's an old operation. It has been running for more than a decade now. Just that it was in the news because there were a lot of activities that were taken up under this operation. The correct answer here is A. It is to prevent the online sale of counterfeit and illicit health products, and it is an operation run by, any idea which organization? This is Interpol. Interpol, that stands for International Police. This is the organization that runs this kind of a project. Now, they collaborate with the police agencies throughout the world, including that of India, to keep a track of the counterfeit and illicit health products. Counterfeit health products are a multi-billion-dollar industry because medicines, especially medicines that claim to cure very hard diseases, they are counterfeited, or their counterfeit parts, their duplicates are available in the market at a cheaper cost, and that is why the Interpol has taken up special efforts to ensure that their sales are restricted. So again, not something that came in, not something that was started just recently, but something that was in the news recently. Do remember that as well. The next question that I have is regarding UAPA. Again, a law that has been in the news in the country for various reasons. The question is, consider the following statements with respect to UAPA, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. First statement. Both Indian and foreign nationals can be charged under the UAPA Act. Second, it is applicable even if the offence is committed outside India. Third, a charge sheet can be filed in maximum of 180 days after the arrest. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now, as you know, the UAPA law has been in the news for a lot of reasons. Again, not something which is recent, not a law that was recently, but it's a very old law, 1967, but it has been in the news because it has been increasingly used now by the government agencies. The correct answer here is D. All the three given statements with respect to the UAPA law are correct. Now, the UAPA law covers anti-national activities especially, even if they take place outside India. So, let's say there is a conspiracy against the state of India that has been hatched, let's say in US, Singapore, or any other country that is outside India. Even then, the UAPA law can be used against that particular person. The other statements are also correct. Both Indian and foreign nationals can be charged under UAPA, and a charge sheet can be filed in a maximum of 180 days after the arrest. In fact, one of the reasons why it is in the news is that in a lot of cases, the charge sheet are not being filed even after 180 days, and that is why the people are being released. Let me ask you an add-on question. Let me give you an add-on fact. The law also says that if the charge sheet does not or is not filed within 90 days, then the person gets bail or gets automatic bail. So 90 days is a time period within which the authorities would have to file the charge sheet. After that also they can file till 180 days. If not, then the case will go away. But if they don't file the charge sheet within 90 days, then the person will get bail. Now, one of the reasons why this law has been said a lot of negative words, many people have said it's a draconian law, is because when you arrest a person and the authorities get 90 days to file a charge sheet without any bail, that is 3 months, it's a long time. And that is why there have been allegations that the authorities have been misusing this particular law, because 90 days again is a very long time to get this kind of a power over any person. Do read about the UAPA law as well and the recent changes that have been made under the UAPA law. Next question, AIM, that is the Atal Innovation Mission, is a flagship project of Ministry of Science and Technology, Niti Aayog, the DRDO, or the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, that is CSIR. Which of these is the organization behind the Atal Innovation Mission, that is the AIM? If you remember, the Atal Innovation Mission or AIM was one of the first schemes that the Modi government had introduced when they had come to power in the very first tenure, that was the 2014 tenure. One of the first schemes that they came up with. This Atal Innovation Mission AIM is a scheme run by the Niti Aayog. Now the Atal Innovation Mission now has a lot of different aspects to it. Let me give you a few examples. So for example, they have something called the Atal Tinkering Labs. So now a lot of schools, not all but a lot of schools have been recognized by the government where these kind of very state-of-the-art labs, laboratories, etc. have been set up, especially to ensure that the students can experiment on a lot of new ideas that they have. So one of the problems that we used to have earlier was in our schools and even in our colleges and universities, even when some students would have some good ideas, they did not have the kind of resources, the kind of labs, etc. to experiment and to see if their ideas are good or not. Now that investment part is taken care of by these kind of infrastructure. Atal Tinkering Labs now allows the students to go ahead and test out their ideas. Not just this, the Atal Innovation Mission now is also helping a lot of startups through incubation centers. Now, what are incubation centers? People who are in the startup field or people who are working might know about the incubation centers. So basically what incubation centers are, let's say I have a startup or I have a startup idea. I want to meet people from this field only. I want to learn from other people, how did they come across the other idea. I want to see if they can work for me or not, or I want to see if from where can I get the investment, from where can I get legal support, etc. All these things are done under these incubation centers. That is how the government of India is also utilizing the Atal Innovation Mission. Now you would have seen on social media also that India right now is home to more than 100 unicorns right now, and the government is taking a lot of pride in that, in the fact that there are a lot of unicorns in India right now, that is the startups that have reached a valuation of $1 billion or above. One of the initiatives that the government also has taken from their end is setting up these kind of incubation centers, and these also come under the Atal Innovation Mission, AIM. Next question with respect to important government schemes. Consider the following statements. Number 1, the National Optical Fiber Network, that is NOFN, which was launched in October 2011, was renamed as BharatNet project in 2015. Question number 2, let me come here so that you can see the screen. Statement number 2. In 2019, the Ministry of Science and Technology also launched the National Broadband Mission to facilitate the universal and equitable access to broadband services across the country. Third, it is implemented by Bharat Broadband Network Limited, that is BBNL, which is a special purpose vehicle, SPV, set up by the Government of India under the Companies Act of 1956 with an authorized capital of rupees 1,000 crore. Which of these given statements that you see here is or are correct? The correct answer here is 1 and 3. First and the third statements are correct. Second statement is not correct because the ministry mentioned over here is wrong. This particular project that you call the National Fiber Optic Network, this is undertaken by the Ministry of Communications. Ministry of Communications. As I said earlier, whenever you read about a government scheme, do read about specifically which is the implementing agency behind the scheme, the department or the ministry that has been given the responsibility to run the scheme. Also, when you see this kind of a question in the prelims examination, there is a lot of chance that the statements which are not correct are the ones that mention about the ministries or the departments that are undertaking these kind of projects. This is where the UPSC usually tries to confuse a lot of aspirants. So do make sure that you have a good hold of what ministry is running which particular project. So this is where the statement gets wrong because it's under Ministry of Communication. Now, in very simple terms, as you know, the BharatNet project is the Government of India's initiative to connect the entire country, specifically all the Gram Sabhas, with high-speed internet connections. This is the main idea behind this particular project. This has been running since 2011. This is still under operations. Now, I'll discuss two more aspects regarding this. First, what is a special purpose vehicle? This is something that you would have read most probably in your economics class or economics discussion. So special purpose vehicles mostly are companies or organizations that have been established specially for one single purpose. Let's assume that when the government of India made a plan that we want to make Delhi Metro. So when the Delhi Metro was made, let's say 2 or 3 companies came together. Let's say a Japanese company came in that we will give you the money or we will give you the engineering. Then Indian government also came in and 2-3 companies came in and said, okay, we'll work together on this project. So what they will do is they will come together, make a company of their own with proper shareholding structure. That will be called a special purpose vehicle. So a specially made organization for a specific purpose is called a special purpose vehicle. Okay. Now, with regards to this also, there is another very interesting fact or interesting phrase that you should all know. There is a phrase called dark fiber. Do you know what is dark fiber? This is something related to this National Optical Fiber Network. So, now let me try and explain what is dark fiber. Let's imagine that I have a big telecommunication company, let's say Jio or Jio. Let's say I have a new organization that I have set up. Now, when I have to offer these kind of telecommunication service or I have to offer these broadband lines, what I have to do is as a company, I have to make a lot of investment. I have to build a lot of infrastructure. I have to lay down huge lines of these optical fiber cable. Optical fiber cables are the cables through which the signals will get transmitted, and that is how you will get your internet connectivity. Now, as a company, when I am starting up my business and I am building all this infrastructure, I will set up a lot of these optical fiber cable. But when I have to use them to give services to my customers in the beginning, I will not use all those fiber cables. Let's say I only use 50% of my capacity. Now, why am I doing that? Because I know in the future, when my customers increase and there are more people who are now watching IPL on their phone, many more people would require more broadband connectivity. They require much more bandwidth. Later on, I cannot now just keep on laying down more cables. So what the government or what the companies do is, they lay down a lot of cables, but they only use a few of them. The cables which have been laid out but they are not being used by the company right now, those are called dark fiber. This is the phrase, dark fiber. So dark fiber are those optical fiber cables which the companies have laid out, which can be used whenever they want, but they will use it in the future, not right now because they are reserving it. They want to explore this bandwidth when more people also join in. Okay, they can be switched on whenever they want. Now, one of the reasons why this is called dark fiber is, if you actually see these optical fiber cable, how do they transmit the signal? They actually transmit the light signals. So there are light signals that are being transmitted inside the optical fiber cable. So there are cables from where light signals are not being transmitted. So that is why they are called dark. So the word dark here signifies the fact that these are the cables through which the signals are not flowing right now. That is the meaning of this particular word, dark fiber. Okay. So this is what you have to remember about this. Next question. Sevottam model proposed by the Second Administrative Reforms Commission includes which of the following components? Number 1, Digital India. Second, Citizens Charter. Third, Grievance Redressal Mechanism. Which of these given statements is or are correct? The correct answer to this question is 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are correct. The first is wrong. If you have attended governance classes or if you have read governance by yourself, you would have seen there is something called the Sevottam model mentioned by the second ARC. Sevottam model. If you know Hindi, you would understand that Sevottam basically is a combination of two words, Seva plus Uttam. So Seva means service and Uttam, as you would know, is excellence. So excellence in service. This is the Sevottam model. So in very simple terms, what the second ARC said was that if you look at the service sector or other sectors across the country, if a particular person has an option to choose between the government company or to choose between a private company, people would usually opt for a private company. If you have to send an important letter by post, would you go to the post office or would you go to, let's say, Blue Dart or let's say DTDC or these kind of organizations? In most cases, you would go to the private organization because you think that they would give you a better service. The problem here is that government is losing out on money. The government is losing out on good employment because only when the government companies have more work, then they can employ more people. So that is why the second ARC suggested that we should focus on providing good services to the people. And they suggested something called the Sevottam model. Sevottam model had 3 components. First component was Citizens Charter, second grievance redressal mechanism, and the third model was excellence in service delivery. Excellence in service delivery. These are the 3 things. Again, if you have read governance, I'm sure you all would be aware of what is the Citizens Charter. Citizens Charter is a document which you will find at almost every government department that has the kind of services that they offer to their customers. It has a vision, the mission of the organization. It also tells you if you are not given a particular service, what can you do, what action can you take, etc. For example, the simplest of this can be when you go and walk into a post office, you can see that on the wall there's a big board which says what are the kind of services that we offer. Let's say they say speed post, which will be delivered within 3 days, normal post 7 days, money order, which used to be a thing of the past, 15 days, etc. Parcel 10 days. So they tell what are the kind of services that we offer, what is the time period within which this service can be provided, and also they tell if we are not able to provide this service, where can you complain, this is the phone number, this is the email ID. Every government department has to have that, okay? And also, let me here add on one more question. If I ask you, which is the government department responsible for making all these citizens charters? So not one department, so every department does not make their own citizens charter. The government of India has given the responsibility to one single department called the DARPG. DARPG, that is Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances. This is the department that has to make the citizens charters for all these government departments. So citizens charter is the first component of the Sevottam model. The second component is grievance redressal mechanism. The grievance redressal mechanism means if you or if the customer has not been given the kind of service that was promised to him or her by the government department, then where can the customer go? Where can he go and complain? What kind of compensation can the person expect in return? That is a grievance redressal mechanism. Where can I show my grievances? And the third is excellence in service delivery. That the government departments should have to match the private sector, and only then they can expect the people to undertake their services as well. These 3 together make up the Sevottam model. Next question. Now before I go ahead, just a reminder, if you have just joined in, today we have been discussing the government schemes of the past 1 year or so. As you know, this is a free crash course which is available for all the civil services aspirants out there. If you have still not liked the video, do like it. If you have still not subscribed to the YouTube channel of BYJU'S IAS, please do that right away. Do press the bell icon as well. You will get notified as soon as the session goes live. Now let's continue with the next question. With regards to the Prevention of Corruption Amendment Act, that is a PCA 2018, consider the following statements. Number one, the PCA 2018 states that offering a bribe is an offense. Offering a bribe. So if you are giving a bribe, that is also an offense. Statement number two, it empowers the police officers to conduct speedy investigations without approval in all circumstances. Which of these given statements is or are correct about the Prevention of Corruption Act? The correct answer here is A. The first statement is correct, that now as per the 2018 amendment, not just accepting a bribe, but even if you are giving a bribe, that is also considered as an offense. The second statement is wrong. Now the reason why it is wrong is, as per the Prevention of Corruption Act, there are certain circumstances under which investigations can be done without approval from the higher order. What are those circumstances? Those are the circumstances if the public official has been caught red-handed. So if the public official has been caught red-handed, those are the circumstances under which the investigation can go on without any particular approval to be taken from the higher authorities. In other cases, no. That is why the correct answer here is A. The first statement is correct. The second statement here is not correct. As you can see here, the pre-investigation approval is required, but not when the person is called red-handed. Red-handed means, let's assume that there is a person who is taking a bribe, and right on the spot the police walks in, or right on the spot the investigative agencies come in and they have caught the person red-handed. Or let's say they have seen the live footage of the person accepting a bribe or doing something which falls in the category of corruption. In that particular case, the investigation agencies do not really require any approval. Before that or without that, they can go ahead without any approval if the person has been caught red-handed. These are some of the things which have now been included in the Prevention of Corruption Act of 2018. Next question. The World Health Organization's Replace program, often seen in the news, is related to which of the following? Number one, eliminating industrially produced trans fat. Second, reducing all trans fat in all foods to less than 2%. Third, reducing the intake of junk food. Or fourth, replacing the groundwater with potable tap water for drinking purposes. Which of these is the major mandate or the objective of the Replace program by the WHO? The correct answer here is A. It is the objective of the program is to eliminate industrially produced trans fat. That is what the Replace program of the WHO is, and you can find a lot of literature about the Replace program on the website of the WHO. Now, as you know, trans fat have been a major danger for a healthy living across the world, especially in the developing nations, and that is why the WHO has started this particular project of replacing these trans fats by something which is healthier. Now the replace word here has a particular full form. So this is review. So basically RE here stands for review, then just a second, let me see in the pen. Yep, oh, sorry. So replace here stands for review, promote, legislative, assess, and after that create, enforce. This is what the WHO is trying to achieve. That is, it is trying to ask the countries across the world to pass laws in such a manner that it becomes very, very difficult to use industrially produced trans fats. The WHO also knows that if they pass a law, or if they pass a mandate, it would not be binding on the governments across the world. So they have to, at the end of the day, depend upon the countries across the world and enforce them to pass a law in such a manner that these kind of laws or these kind of laws are made, so that it is very, very difficult for the governments or for the companies across the world to use industrially produced trans fat. So this is the replace program that has been done by the WHO. This is that particular statement. If you want, you can make a note of it. Next, AAAN, that is the action agenda on Atmanirbhar Bharat, has been released by which of the following organizations? AAAN. Is it the Niti Aayog? Is it the NASSCOM? Is it the Ministry of Finance, or none of the above? Which of these organizations has released the action agenda for Atmanirbhar Bharat? Now, it's a very unique kind of a question for a very special purpose. Usually, when you see these kind of questions, or usually when you see these kind of these kind of options in the UPSC examination, you will see that it is a very, very rare occurrence that the answer is none of the above. Even if you analyze all the previous UPSC papers, you will get to know that it's a very, very rare occurrence that none of the above is the answer. But in this case, it is the answer. The organization which is actually behind releasing this action agenda is TIFAC, TIFAC, which works under Department of Science and Technology. So TIFAC, that works on Department of Science and Technology, they are the ones who have released this particular agenda of how can India go ahead and ensure that our prospect of Atmanirbhar Bharat becomes a reality, and what action has to be taken for that, especially in the field of science and tech. What are the advancements that we are looking for in order to achieve our objective of the Atmanirbhar Bharat? This was recently released, and that is why it was in the news. Next question. Consider the following statements with respect to the Kudum Shri mission. Number 1. It is Karnataka's flagship poverty alleviation and women empowerment scheme. Second, it has 3 components: microcredit, entrepreneurship, and empowerment. And third, Kudum Shri is a government agency that has a budget and staff paid by the government. Which of these given statements about the Kudum Shri scheme is or are correct? The correct answer here is B. 2 and 3 are correct. The first statement is wrong because it is actually Kerala government's scheme. It is a Kerala government scheme, very, very famous scheme, the Kudum Shri mission. It started in 1998. In fact, if you read about it, it is one of the prime examples of how any state in India has ensured women empowerment by giving much more power to women, by pushing them towards entrepreneurship, by giving them microcredit, etc. Do read about this. Kudum Shri is a shining example of how self-help groups can actually lead to changing the lives of lakhs and lakhs of people across the country. Now, as the statement 2 says, it has 3 components: microcredit, entrepreneurship, and empowerment. What is microcredit? I hope many of you are aware of this. Microcredits are very, very small loans which are usually given to those people who want to run a very small business. Let's say there is a vegetable vendor, let's say there is a fruit vendor, or let's say there is someone who is selling snacks on the road. Now, those kind of people, if they want to start a business, how much capital would they require? They would not require lakhs and crores of rupees. They might require a loan of, let's say, 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 rupees. And how do they go to the bank? When they go to the bank will ask for hundreds of documents. They will ask for income tax returns or proof of can you pay back the loan or not. That is why they have a very hard time in getting credit from the bank. And that is where the microcredit agencies come into the picture. One of the prime examples was the Bandhan Bank, which has now become a full-fledged bank, but Bandhan used to be a very famous microcredit organization. So these kind of organizations, what they do is they give these small loans to the people, and these vendors would then repay. For example, they repay like 100 to 200 rupees every day. So at the end of the day, let's say if they have made an income, or not income, but let's say they have a revenue of 1,000 rupees in a day. At the end of the day, the person would come to them and they will give 100, 200 rupees to the person. That is how they repay the loan. In fact, it has been proven by studies that people who take these kind of loans are much, much lesser likely to default as compared to people who take much higher loan and they go to the bank. That is what Kudum Shri also does. They are also pushing women towards entrepreneurship by forming self-help groups, by giving them more skills on different types of aspects on how they can manufacture small little things and then they can sell it in the market. And apart from that, they also empower women by making them more financially independent. Now it is a part of the government itself. It's a government agency. It has been given a proper staff and budget. Remember, it is an initiative of the Kerala government. Next question. Consider the following statements. Number 1. The facility of postal ballot is available to all eligible voters of India. Second, the Ministry of Law and Justice has approved the postal ballot facility for non-resident Indians. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now, before we go into what is the correct statement, let's first discuss what is a postal ballot exactly. See, usually whenever there is a election, let's say parliament election, Lok Sabha elections, or let's say it's a legislative assembly elections, in order for you to vote, there are specific voting stations. You have to go there. You have to make sure that you have your voter ID card with you, your name is in the voter list, and then you go stand in line, then you can vote. But what about those people who can't come and vote? There are some people who would never be able to come and vote, right? I'll give you an example. Let's assume there are people who are involved in essential services. Essential services means that they can't take an off to come and vote. Who can they be? Let's say a person who is working in the railways, who is a train driver, or a person who is a sanitation worker, or a person who is delivering milk to the nearby places, or milk from the producer to the retailers. These are the people who are involved in essential work. They can't take an off to come and vote. So what happens to them? Secondly, there are also NRIs. So NRIs are non-resident Indians. Means people who are Indian citizens but they are residing outside India. Maybe they are working, maybe they have a job there, but they are eligible voters of India. So what happens to them? Or in other case, there are people who are working in the armed forces also. In most of the scenarios, the people who are working in the armed forces would not be placed in their hometown. So their voter ID may be of, let's say, Lucknow, Saharanpur, and maybe let's say they are placed in Ladakh right now. So they can't come all the way back to vote. So for some of these, not for all, for some of these we have a facility called the postal ballot. Postal ballot means, as the name suggests, they can send their vote by post and then it is counted. If you have seen the news, especially on the election day, the day that the election results are to be announced, on the day when the votes are counted, you would see that 8 AM when the counting starts, the news anchors keep on repeating, these are just the postal ballots being counted, these are just the postal ballots being counted. So postal ballots are the ones that are first counted and then the others are counted. So first statement here is, all eligible voters get postal ballot? No, not all. There are a few categories of people who will get postal ballot facility. For example, people who are working in the armed forces, they will get postal ballot facility. Also, people who are on election duty. See, for most of us, you, me, on election day, we go and we vote, but there are also people who are conducting that election, right? The people who are sitting in that voting booth, who is checking your voter ID, who is seeing your name, or who is sitting there making sure everything goes to plan. So the person who are on election duty themselves, they also would have the postal ballot facility. So these are some of the people who have been given postal ballot facility. In fact, before the last Lok Sabha election, the Election Commission of India announced that we will also be extending this postal ballot facility to people who are senior citizens above 80 years of age. So people above 80 years of age have also been given this postal ballot facility. Not just them, people who are under preventive detention also have postal ballot facility. So these are some of the categories of people who can avail postal ballot. Not you, not me, not NRIs. So how about the NRIs? Can they vote or not? So let's say there is an Indian citizen who is working in the US or who is studying in, let's say, Australia. he or she has a voter ID card. Can they vote? Yes, they can vote, but they have to come back to India to vote. There is no facility for them to send a post or to go to our embassy and vote. No, they have to come back to India and vote. So not all eligible voters have postal ballot facility, and the second is also wrong. Why? There were talks after 2014 when the BJP came to power. There were talks that the BJP wanted to give the postal ballot facility to the NRIs also. The bill was also introduced in the last government's tenure, but the bill lapsed, the tenure of the government ended, and it has not been taken up now. So as of now, as we are discussing it today, the NRIs don't have the facility of postal ballot. Okay. Now, while we are at it, let me ask you one more question. Who exactly are NRIs? Or when I say who, I want to know what is the definition of NRI. Let's say I go to America for a couple of months, let's say to travel, to study something, take up a short course. Do I become an NRI? There is a specific requirement. That is, if I stay in India for over 182 days in a year, then I will be called an NRI. That is the definition of NRI, non-resident Indian. So I will still be an Indian citizen, just that if you actually see, it's 50%. So if over half of year, if I stay outside of the country, then I will be called officially an NRI, the non-resident Indian. Right now, NRIs, if they have to vote, they have to come back to India especially to vote. Now, this particular news, in fact, was in the news just a few weeks back. The reason was that our Chief Election Commissioner actually was on a tour. He visited South Africa, where he met people of Indian origin. He said that, yes, you can vote, but you have to come back. But even when you come back, before that, you have to register yourself as a voter. So please go to the website of the Election Commission, register yourself as a voter, but you have to come back eventually to vote. And as you can expect, very, very few people would come all the way back to India just to vote if they're NRIs. Okay. So the postal ballot facility, when you remember about this, do remember name of a form also. This is called Form 13B. So do remember this, Form 13B. So Form 13B is the name of the form that you actually get if you are appearing in the postal ballot. Okay, Form 13A and Form 13B. Next question. Consider the following statements with regards to Eklavya Model Residential Schools. Number 1. As per the announcement made in the Union Budget of 2021-22, every block with more than 30% tribal population will get an EMRS, that is Eklavya Model Residential School. Second, the EMRS will cater to students from nursery to class 12th. And third, the Ministry of Tribal Affairs is the nodal ministry for this particular scheme. Which of these given statements is or are correct about the Eklavya Model Residential School? Now, as the name suggests, these are the schools which have been established by the Government of India, specially to provide high quality education to the tribal youth of the country. As per the government, the law is, first, they will have to be mandatorily set up in those blocks where the tribal population is over 50% and not over 30%. So the first statement here is wrong. It is over 50%, that is the criteria. Also, the second statement here is incorrect because these schools will cater to students from class 6th to 12th, not nursery to 12th. If you, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this or not, but if you're familiar, there is a very similar concept that has been running for many years. Those are called Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas. Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas. Now, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas are not specifically for the tribal youth. They are for any youth across the country, whoever wants to join. So the model of Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas are, they are free of cost school. They don't really charge any money. There will be one of such schools in every district across the country, and they also take admission from class 6th, I think, if I'm not wrong. And they are very, very good schools, although they are government schools and we don't really have we don't really have a great image in our mind of government schools, but these schools also provide high quality education to the students. In fact, one of my very close friends is or had done his studies from Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya. He's pretty well settled in America right now. So on the similar models, now we have started these schools called the Eklavya school. So the first statement is wrong, second statement also wrong, the third statement is correct. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs is the nodal ministry under this particular scheme. That is what the government is planning to do. Also, whenever you see a scheme where the government says that we will set up a school, for example, in a district which has over 50% tribal population, but you have to understand the government will never make such a statement without giving a minimum number. So there is a minimum number also attached to it. So block having minimum population of 20,000 and over those 50% have to be tribal population. That is where these schools have to be mandatorily set up. Okay, 20,000 population, along with that 50% has to be tribal youth, only then these schools will be set up. Next question. Which of the following is the aim of intensified mission Indradhanush 4.0? Number 1. To reach each and every child up to 2 years of age and all pregnant women in all aspirational districts. Second, to reach each and every child up to 2 years of age and all those pregnant women who have been left uncovered. Third, to reach each and every child up to 5 years of age and all those pregnant women who have been left uncovered. And fourth, to reach each and every citizen to vaccinate them against vaccine preventable viral diseases. Which of these is the objective of mission or intensified mission Indradhanush 4.0? The correct answer here is B. It aims to reach each and every child within 2 years of age and all those pregnant women who have been left uncovered. Now, as the number suggests, there have been multiple intensified mission Indradhanush projects, 2.0, 3.0, now it is 4.0. The reason why it is required is, ever since the problem of COVID pandemic started, not just in India but across the world, whenever anyone thinks about vaccine, we only think about the COVID vaccine. And that is why even the companies, you can also take example of Serum Institute of India, the companies who actually make a lot of vaccines or who used to make a lot of vaccines for a lot of diseases, they are also mainly focusing on the COVID vaccine only. As a result of which, what has happened is that in the past few years, there has been a problem that a lot of children and pregnant women who require these vaccines have been left out of getting vaccines for other kinds of diseases. And that is where this initiative comes in. As per this particular initiative, the children who have been left that are till the age of 2 years and all those pregnant women who have not been getting their vaccination, they will have to get their vaccinations in all the districts. So it's not about just the aspirational districts, it's about all the districts. Also, as you would know, the Indradhanush vaccination program mainly gives vaccination against 12 diseases, which includes encephalitis and there's diphtheria, etc. All these are covered under this, meningitis, hepatitis B, etc. All these are covered under this particular Indradhanush program that has been running for a long time under the Government of India's aegis. Next, with respect to the Information Technology, Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021, consider the following statements. Number 1, it established a 3-tier grievance redressal mechanism for news publishers and OTT platforms and digital media. Second, the guidelines related to the social media to be administered by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Which of these given statements is or are correct? The correct answer over here is A. 1 is correct, the second statement is wrong. So these particular guidelines were a lot in the news, that is the IT Rules 2021. These guidelines especially were in the news because they were the ones who were covering OTT platforms and some other social media, digital media platforms including YouTube, etc. Now what we have seen is, in the past few years, there have been a lot of new news channels, for example, that have come out that are specially and just only on YouTube. They don't publish their content on television, because they don't publish their content on television, etc., they are not covered under the existing rules of the government. And the government, that is why, wanted to bring these kind of platforms also under some kind of censorship or some kind of government framework. And that is where these rules have come in. Now, the reason why the second statement is incorrect is that it is the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology which will administer this. Electronics and Information Technology, IT. Now, if you have read about this, you might be slightly confused about the second statement. And the reason why you can be slightly confused is that when the rules came out, there were actually two types of or multiple types of guidelines. First was this, guidelines related to the social media administration. These are the ones that are given by Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Then there is one more set of guidelines that came out. Those were the ethics code. These ethics code were the ones that were given by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. So let me write it here for you. Ethics code was given by Ministry of INB, Information and Broadcasting, while the use of social media, how it will be used, what can you post, what can you not post, what action can be taken against you if you post some wrong kind of content, that guideline was given by Electronics and IT Ministry. So do remember the difference between the two, okay? Do remember these guidelines, they were a lot in the news, especially to curb the freedom that has been given or unlimited freedom that has been given by the OTT and social media platforms. Next question. Consider the following statements about the National Infrastructure Pipeline. Number one, the NIP or National Infrastructure Pipeline aims to capture both greenfield and brownfield projects. Second, it is jointly funded by the central government, the state government and the private sector. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now, the National Infrastructure Pipeline was something that was in the news quite a lot. The government talked about it, especially with the aim of ensuring that the government's infrastructure can be made better use of, and there is good amount of infrastructure that is developed by the government itself. The correct answer here is C. Both the given statements are correct. 1 and 2 here are correct. The first statement says that it will include greenfield and brownfield projects. Now, for those of you who don't know the difference between the two, greenfield projects are those which are built from the scratch. Built from the scratch. So, for example, let's say if the government of India thinks that they want to build an airport and there's just a barren land, there is nothing on the land or there is no sign of airport, they start building it from the foundation, from the base of it, that is called a greenfield project. Then there is a brownfield project. Brownfield project means when there is an existing project and you go there, you maybe refurbish all of that, or maybe you make it much more advanced, or you put much more money into that, but there was an existing foundation that was existing earlier as well. Those are brownfield projects. Greenfield are the ones that start anew. Second statement is also correct. These are funded by the central government, state governments and also the private sector. This is how these projects will come up. Next question. Consider the following statement with regards to the star campaigners in elections conducted in India. Number one, all political parties registered under the Election Commission of India are allowed to have at least 20 star campaigners. Second, all star campaigners are selected by the political parties themselves on approval of the Election Commission. Third, the model code of conduct is relaxed for the star campaigners. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now, a lot of things to unfold here. Star campaigners, registered political parties, model code of conduct. I'm sure most of you are aware of most of these things. Now, let's start with first, registered political party. So, there are two types of political parties that we have in India. registered but not recognized, then they are registered plus recognized. So if you have to open up a political party, you go to Election Commission of India, ask them that you want to get a political party. They will tell you these are the paperwork that you have to do, you submit all the documentation and you can have your party. So those are the registered political parties. For having a registered political party, you don't have to fight any elections. You don't have to get any votes, etc. There are thousands of registered political parties in India who have never fought any election. There are so many political parties in India which are registered officially, but you have never even heard the name. Those are there because they have never even fought any election. Then the second types of political parties are registered and recognized also. Now the political parties in India can be state recognized or they can be national recognized as well. For recognition at the state or at the national level, you would have to fulfill certain qualifications. You have to get certain minimum number of seats, certain minimum number of votes, and then you can become a recognized party. Like nationally recognized parties include BJP, Congress, etc. Now, do remember this, as per the law in India, if you are a recognized party like BJP, Congress, etc., you can name 40 star campaigners. You can name 40 star campaigners. But if you are a registered party only, not recognized, then you can name 20 star campaigners. Okay? So if you are registered but not recognized party, then 20 star campaigners. If you are registered and recognized political party, then you can name 40 star campaigners. So now let's look at the first statement again. All parties registered are allowed to have at least 20 star campaigners, right or wrong? This is correct. At least 20 are allowed to all registered parties. Recognized ones can go ahead and name up to 40. Second statement is all star campaigners selected by political parties themselves. This is also correct. Now who are star campaigners? Star campaigners are the ones who, let's say the BJP can name 40 people as star campaigners, or they can be anyone. They can be their own leaders. Let's say they say the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah, these are the people who are star campaigners. Let's say they bring in some movie stars, some cricketers, etc. Who are these people? They go hold rallies to gather support for the entire party. Those are called star campaigners. Now the concept of star campaigner is expenditure of star campaigners traveling is not included in the candidate's expenditure. Now you have to understand, when you are fighting elections in India, Lok Sabha or Legislative Assembly elections, you can have unlimited amount of money, but you cannot spend unlimited amount of money. There is a limit up till which you can spend the money in your election campaigning. Okay? Now that is where the concept of star campaigners come in. Star campaigners are those people who can travel across the country. Their traveling expenditure will not be counted in that limit, and they can keep on asking for votes for the political parties. They don't have to be only from the political party, they can be from outside the political party also, but they're selected by the political party themselves. Third statement is the model code of conduct is relaxed for star campaigners. This is wrong. The model code of conduct is not relaxed for them. What is the model code of conduct? I'm sure all of you are aware of the fact. Model code of conduct means the set of guidelines, rules, which are published by the Election Commission of India on how the political parties, on how the candidates will have to conduct themselves before and during the election. When does the model code of conduct begin? It begins from the day or from the very second that the Election Commission of India announces the schedules of the election. Let's say Election Commission of India usually 40-45 days in before the election, Election Commission of India announces that this will be the election schedule. Let's say when UP elections had to happen, 1.5 months before that, they announced that this is the date for UP elections. When they announce that, this is when the model code of conduct begins. Means from now onwards, no new government schemes can be announced. Then apart from that, you cannot campaign from places of religion. You cannot promise money or gifts, etc. to the people of India against their vote. These are some of the guidelines which are a part of model code of conduct, which apply to all the candidates and all the political parties. There is no relaxation for star campaigners as well. Okay, so the correct answer here is A, 1 and 2 are correct. Next question. With reference to Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Suraksha Nidhi, consider the following statements. Number 1. It has been set up as dedicated and non-lapsable fund to collect certain share of proceeds from the health and education cess. Second, this fund would be solely utilized for funding PM Atmanirbhar Swachh Bharat Yojana, there is a spelling mistake here, Swachh Bharat Yojana, which was launched in the Union Budget of 2021-22. Which of these given statements is or are correct? The correct answer here is A. This money will be dedicated and will be collected through certain education cess, especially for health and other related needs. Now, I'm not sure if you are following it or not, but on YouTube, we are also running a mnemonic series in which we have been making videos on how to remember important stuff, how to remember more facts about the prelims examination. That series also is available on the YouTube channel of BYJU'S IAS. In one of those videos, I did discuss the fact that while attempting a prelims question, you have to look out for certain words which indicate to you that usually, I'm not saying always, but usually in most cases the statements can turn out to be wrong. Usually those words are the extreme words which are mentioned. For example, over here when you see the words such as this, solely. So words such as solely, only, never, always, these are extreme words. I'm not saying they're always incorrect, but in most of the cases, these statements or these kind of words will tell you that the statement is usually wrong. In this particular case also, the second statement is wrong. The reason is that this money that will be collected under the Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Suraksha Nidhi program, this money will be utilized for various purposes and not just for this mentioned scheme. It can also be utilized for different types of health emergencies, even for PM Swasthya Suraksha Yojana. So a lot of different schemes are covered under it, mostly related to health only. It's not going to go to some other sector, but it's mostly in health. But it's not that it will only be used for this particular scheme as mentioned here. So the first statement is correct. The second statement here is wrong. Also, this is a non-lapsable fund. Non-lapsable fund means if a certain amount of money is given in this particular fund, it will not lapse at the end of the financial year. In many different types of funds, once the financial year ends, and if the money has still not been utilized, it will go back to Consolidated Fund of India. But here it will not be the case. It will remain in that particular fund. Okay. Next question. The early harvest agreement, sometimes seen in the news, deals with which of the following? Number 1, provisions of early harvest seeds to the farmers. Second, precursor to the implementation of the free trade agreement. Third, the scheme to reduce water consumption in agriculture. And fourth, promotion of rural enterprises. Which of these deals with early harvest agreement? If you have been reading the news and if you have been reading the current affair analysis that we do, you would very surely know the answer. The answer here is, it is a precursor to the implementation of free trade agreement. Now, if you have been following the news, you would see the fact that the government of India, over the past few months especially, has been extremely keen on signing a lot of free trade agreements. In fact, in the past few months, we have signed a free trade agreement with Australia. We have signed one with UAE. Then with UK, we are in discussions. We are hoping to get it done as soon as possible. The government of India also made a statement that most probably by next year, we might also have our free trade agreement with EU, although these two are still in the talks. But with Australia, with UAE, we have already finalized this. Now, usually what happens is, before such kind of free trade agreements are signed, usually free trade agreements are when the two countries agree that when a product or specific products come from your country to our country, we will not put taxes on them. And the other country also retaliates that, okay, if some products are coming from your country to my country, I will also not put taxes on them. Before that, what the two nations want is, they want to test the market, or they want to see, as such, let's start with certain few products and let's see if we are able to successfully manage it or not. So usually whenever a free trade agreements are signed, before that usually some smaller scale agreements are signed. Those are called the early harvest agreements. So whenever the two nations or whenever the two sides come together to sign something called the early harvest agreement, you can be rest assured that the two sides are actually talking about signing a free trade agreement in the very future. It was in the news with respect to Australia specifically, and that is why we are covering it here. Before we finalize a free trade agreement with Australia, we actually, India and Australia, signed a early harvest agreement, and that is why it was in the news specifically. Okay. Next question. With reference to the FAME scheme, FAME, consider the following statements. Number 1. The FAME scheme provides for upfront demand incentive for the purchase of electric vehicles used only for public transportation. Second, the incentive provided under the scheme depends upon the battery capacity of the vehicles. Which of these given statements is or are correct? The correct answer here, as you could know, is B. The FAME scheme, in very simple terms, is a scheme under which the government of India says that we will give you subsidy and incentives if you opt for electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. So not just electric but hybrid vehicles also. And I'll just come in 1 minute what are hybrid vehicles. So government of India is saying that if you go to electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles, then we'll give you certain subsidy, certain incentives. Now the reason is very clear for all of you. The reason why the government is doing this, environmental reasons. The government of India wants to cut down the fuel consumption. We anyways import huge quantities of fuel, so we want to substitute it in whatever way possible. And that is why the government of India has been trying to give a push to the people to accept the electric vehicles and the hybrid vehicles. Now in terms of four-wheelers, yes, there are a few cars, electric cars like Tata Nexon, etc., which are sold in good quantity, but at least in terms of two-wheelers, if you see around you, especially in metro cities, the acceptance of electric two-wheelers is increasing at a very fast pace. One of the reasons is that the government has been trying to give certain push to these. Now, the statement that you see here is that this is incentive is only for public transportation, then no, this is wrong. So it is not just for public transportation. Public transportation means, let's say if you're buying electric bus for transportation of the public, or you're buying some other vehicle which will be used for public transportation, it does not just cover that, it covers the private vehicles as well. So that is why it is wrong, because if it was only for the public sector vehicle, then it would never have impacted the local population or general population. The second statement here is absolutely correct. Now, as I said earlier, it covers not just the electric vehicles, but it also covers hybrid vehicles. Now, what are hybrid vehicles? If you follow the car industry, or if you follow the new developments and new kind of cars that are coming up, you might know what are hybrid vehicles. Let me give you an example of a new version that is coming or has been launched of Honda City. So it's a hybrid vehicle in the sense that it will run on petrol also, and it will run on battery also. Now you might ask that battery is the electric battery only, how is it different? But no, these are not electric batteries. So electric batteries are different, you have to charge it by using electricity, let's say in Tata Nexon EV. These kind of batteries in these kind of cars, they will charge themselves when the car is running. So when the car is running, the wheels are rotating, through that particular energy, through that kinetic energy, they will be charging the battery. So when the car is going, the battery is charging automatically. So that particular car will be able to run on battery also for some time, and it will be able to run on petrol also. These are called hybrid cars. Okay. So the government of India is not just pushing you towards accepting electric vehicles, but they're also pushing you towards accepting hybrid vehicles as well. As you know, the FAME stands for faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles. Okay, this is what the government scheme is. Next, okay, this was FAME. Next question is this. With respect to the harmonized list of infrastructure sector, consider the following statements. Number one, the harmonized list comprises of both physical infrastructure as well as social infrastructure. Second, the harmonized list of infrastructure sector is notified by the Ministry of Finance. Which of these given statements is or are correct? The correct answer here is C. Both these given statements are correct. Now, let me try and explain to you in very simple terms what is this harmonized list of infrastructure sector. So, the Ministry of Finance at the union government level, what they do is they make a list, they publish this kind of a list in which they specify what exactly are the kind of infrastructure which will be a part of the harmonized list. In other words, these infrastructures which are identified in this list, for making those, it will be easier for the organizations and for the companies to get loans at easier terms. This is the simplest of the explanation, that in order to build better infrastructure, in order to build that we have more of these kind of infrastructures, the Government of India through the Ministry of Finance brings them to the harmonized list. I'll give you some examples of what are these kind of infrastructures. So these include bridges, these includes highways, these even includes ports, etc. So these are the kind of infrastructure, and this is social infrastructure also. For example, it might also include toilets, etc., sanitation related infrastructure. This even has electricity related infrastructure like transmission of electricity, power sector, all these kind of infrastructure, as you can see, not just physical but social infrastructure as well. Social infrastructure means sanitation related facilities, water management, waste treatment plants. As you know, the waste treatment problem is one of the huge problems that we have in India. If you have been following the news, if you live in Delhi or nearby Delhi, you know there are mountains of waste that are in Delhi which are burning which have been burning for a lot of days, creating just unimaginable pollution. So those waste related problems, making of waste management plants, etc., all of that would be a part of the harmonized list of infrastructure sector, through which it will be much easier to get loans, etc. That is what the Government of India is planning to do by this particular scheme. Next, consider the following statements with regards to the e-way bill under the GST. Number one, the e-way bill is mandatory for the transportation of goods whose value exceeds rupees 1 lakh. Second, the e-way bills are mandatory for the movement of goods both within a state as well as from one state to another. Which of these given statements is or are correct? See, whenever you see these kind of questions, especially those questions who have a number, amount, 1 lakh, 20,000, 50,000, 5 lakh, those become very tricky. Because there is no two-way about it, right? Either you know it or you don't know it. You can keep on thinking about the question. If you're not sure of the amount, you will never be able to attempt this kind of question. That is why these are pretty tricky questions. If you look at this statement, the first statement is actually wrong. The reason is, if you are transporting goods of a minimum value of rupees 50,000, then the e-way bill automatically becomes a necessity. So it's not 1 lakh, it is 50,000. That is why the first statement is wrong. The second statement, the e-way bills are mandatory for movement within the state, also outside the state, is actually true. So even when you are moving goods within the state, that is also one of the things under which you still require an e-way bill. Now the reason why this e-way bill of the GST or has been made is especially because you want to know that when the stuff is transported from one place to the other place, let's say I'll give you a very simple example. So let's assume that I have bought a sofa or I have bought a bed or something like that. and I want it to be delivered from the manufacturer's place to my place. It's a distance of, let's say, 20, 30, 50 kilometers. So when the transportation is happening, in between if there's a police checking, in between if there is a police officer or traffic police that stop the truck and they ask whose stuff is this, where you are taking, in that case they will have to show the bill. If the amount is minimum 50,000, the bill has to be there. It has to be even within the state and outside the state as well. Now, in the e-way bill, usually what you have is a unique e-way bill number. So you cannot just show the policeman or the traffic police or the agencies any bill. It would have a specific number, and also that specific number can be checked by the authorities on the portal to check whether or not it has been entered correctly. So it's a foolproof process to make sure that there is no problem at the tax collection when it comes to the GST. Now there is also one interesting point about this e-way bill, if you want to go into slight more detail, that is about the validity of the e-way bill. For how long are they valid? For example, if today I generate an e-way bill, if I, let's say, I'm a merchant, I sold something, I wanted to be transported to the other part of the town or other part of the state. If I want to generate an e-way bill, I generate an e-way bill from the portal. For how long will it be valid? So it depends on for how many kilometers are you transporting the stuff. For example, if you are transporting it up to 100 kilometers or less, then the e-way bill will only be valid for 1 day. Okay, for 100 kilometers only for 1 day. Then 100 to 300 kilometers, this is only valid for 3 days, because it is expected that the maximum that you will take to go on and cover these 300 kilometers will be 3 days. Similarly, when you go 300 to 500 kilometers, this e-way bill is valid for 5 days. So that is how it works. There are certain slabs that are given here. Okay, I'll give you the other slabs. These are very easy to remember. So basically 10, after this is 500 to 1000 slab, that is for 10 days. And then if it is going beyond 10,000 or 1000 kilometer, then it is 15 days. That is the end. That is the last slab. 1000 kilometer or beyond, this is valid for 15 days, sorry, 15. That is the maximum validity of e-way bill, okay? Do remember that also. So if the statement is only what is the maximum validity of an e-way bill, that has to be 15 days only, not more than that, okay? Next, these are some of the facts. If you want, you can read about them. Next question is this. With respect to E2025, recently seen in the news, consider the following statements. Number 1, it is launched by the World Health Organization, WHO. Second, it aims to eradicate tuberculosis or TB from 25 identified countries by 2025. Which of these given statements is or are correct? The correct answer here is A. One only is correct, the second statement is wrong. Now, questions related to disease anyways were pretty common even before the COVID pandemic hit. On an average, usually we used to see one question or maximum 2 questions every single year from the disease. So the kind of question that we usually used to see were more related to science. For example, which of the following diseases are caused by viruses, which are the ones which are caused by bacteria, parasites, etc., fungi. So those are the kind of questions that we used to see. The other kind of question that we used to see were the ones that were in the news. For example, there was a question about which of the following diseases has been eradicated. You can leave that answer in the comment section of the video also. Which is the only disease that has been eradicated from the world entirely? So those kind of questions have been asked in the past as well. So even before the COVID pandemic hit or COVID was a part of our life, disease-related questions were always a part of the UPSC exam. Now it has become even more relevant, not just because of the COVID, but the other diseases also that are still a threat to us. With that respect, this is an important scheme that or an important initiative that you must know. First is correct, it has been launched by the World Health Organization, WHO. The second statement is, it aims to eradicate tuberculosis, TB. Now, is TB the correct statement? No, it is not to eradicate TB, it is to eradicate malaria. So, the aim is to eradicate malaria from 25 identified nations by 2025. Now, let me ask you one more question here, and let's see how much you know India. Amongst these 25 nations here, is India a part or not? Is India a part of these 25 nations, or is India not a part of these 25 nations? You can think just in your mind and see if you know the answer or not. India, fortunately, is not a part of these 25 nations. So, these are the 25 nations that you actually see here. Thailand, Malaysia, Botswana, Mexico, Honduras, Saudi Arabia, Nepal. So, India is not a part of this. Okay, do remember this. There is Nepal, Bhutan, etc., but not India. Next question. Which of the following best describes Sarthak, recently seen in the news? Number 1, an electronic marketplace providing a platform to connect aqua farmers and exporters. Okay. Second, a comprehensive, scalable and national digital well-being platform and an app. Third, an indicative and suggestive implementation plan for school education. And fourth, an electricity trading marketplace. What is Sarthak all about? Very diverse options, not related to each other at all. The correct answer is, it is actually a part of the school education system. So, Sarthak is a kind of a new initiative that was a part of the national education policy. If I have to define it in very simple terms, what Sarthak is trying to do is, they are trying to assist the states and union territories in ensuring that they work towards the goals of the national education policy and they reach all these goals. So, their focus is to provide both inside classroom and outside classroom to the students, to set up the infrastructure and to set up the course curriculum in such a way through the Sarthak project to ensure that they get high quality education. Now, it's not very easy to remember. Sarthak here stands for Students and Teachers Holistic Advancement through Quality Education. Now, don't ask me how this quality education is only Q and how is the full form or short form, but this is what Sarthak actually stands for. These kind of questions are also in the news and also have been asked in the UPSC earlier. Now, you might say, would the UPSC not give you full forms of these things while they are asking the question? No, not necessarily. Because if the UPSC does give you full form, then it will reveal the answer anyway. So, I'll give you an example. A few years back, there was a question in the prelims examination very similar to this. The question was, which of the following is related to or which of the following is meant by MOOC? MOOC. So, if you knew the full form of MOOC, you would be able to answer very easily. But if you don't know the full form of MOOC, then it would become a problem. Now, you can also search for what is MOOC. This was the question in the prelims. Write in the comment what is MOOC and what is it related to. So, I'm just giving you an idea or giving you a hint that when the UPSC will ask you these kind of questions, it is not necessary that they will give you the full form. Because if they will give you the full form, then automatically they will reveal the answer anyway. So, that is why don't expect the full forms, etc. You have to make more efforts to make sure that you remember these government schemes anyway. So, remember, Sarthak is related specially to school education to ensure that quality school education is provided to the children. Okay. Next question is this. The newly launched eSanta or eSanta, however you want to call it, initiative of the government deals with which amongst the following? Number 1, electronic marketplace to connect aqua farmers and the buyers. Second, mobile app to provide weather updates to the fishermen. Third, e-governance initiative to track delivery of vaccines. And fourth, e-governance initiative for providing online education to the differently abled. Which of these is e-Santa? The correct answer over here is A. This is an electronic marketplace to connect the aqua farmers and the buyers. Let me take you back to the very first question that we discussed today. If you were one of those who joined at 7:30 p.m. sharp, you would remember the very first question that we discussed today was regarding Shafri. Remember? So, Shafri. This Shafri initiative, if you remember, and let me just sharpen your memory again, this Shafri initiative specially was about the government of India certifying aquaculture, certifying the products of those people who are working in the field of fisheries and who want to export more stuff. I told you earlier as well, the government of India in the past year or so has taken multiple initiatives, especially to augur and increase the income of those people who are working in the field of aquaculture, who are working in the field of fishery, etc. And I told you earlier also, these initiatives are important because the government also is talking a lot about them. That was one initiative. Now this is the other one, that is e-Santa. This is an electronic marketplace where the government is trying to connect the aqua farmers along with those who want to buy their products in retail or in the wholesale. The entire idea of this particular initiative is to eliminate the middleman. So they don't want anyone in the middle. They want that the fisheries, the people who are actually catching these fish, they should be the one who should be able to sell it to the buyers, whoever want to take it from them. These also include the exporters. These include people who want to buy these products from outside India as well. Also, this portal is available in multiple local languages. Because you have to understand, a lot of people who are involved in fisheries or aquaculture activities might not be very proficient in English, and they might be much more interested if such kind of portals, etc. are made in their own language. That is why, as per the Government of India, this initiative will be in multiple languages. So do remember that as well. Okay. Next question. The term SUPACE, S-U-P-A-C-E, sometimes appears in the news in the context of which of the following? Number 1, Bitcoin's regulations by the RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Second, space exploration by JAXA, that is a Japanese space agency. Third, artificial intelligence portal to assist judiciary. And fourth, the International Space Station, ISS. Which of these is SUPACE, S-U-P-A-C-E? Think about it. The correct answer is C. It is actually an AI portal designed to assist the judiciary. Now, this is one of those questions that if you know the answer, great. If you don't know the answer, if you're just thinking about it, most probably you will not arrive at this particular option. Now, this is actually a portal that was launched a few months back. It's an interesting portal. The idea is that, for example, there is a particular case that is being heard. Let's say a judge is hearing a case, or let's say a murder case, or a case which is about kind of an assault. What this portal will do is, it will automatically see from the directory of the cases what were the similar kind of cases that were heard a few years back. And what it will do is, to help the judges, it will bring up all those cases to the judges, and obviously they will have to read it, and if they want, they can take a reference from that. In simple terms, this is what this will do. SUPACE, it will help the judges in collecting all that data, ensuring that all those relevant examples are brought to them whenever they are hearing such kind of case. Now remember this will not give any judgment, okay? It's not that a portal or a robot will be sitting instead of a judge and hearing a case. So nothing like that will happen, okay? Will not give any judgment. Do remember that. It will not even help the judges in giving a judgment as such. The only thing that it will do is, it will collect all the relevant facts, So all the relevant facts, data, these kind of things, provisions, etc. of the law, it will automatically be presented to these judges so that they can make a much more informed decision. So we are not replacing the judges with these kind of machines or portals. The only thing that we are doing is we are making sure that they have all the information in their hands, whatever they need. Okay. Now SUPACE, as you can see, SUP is actually for Supreme Court. So the idea is that it will start or it will be at the Supreme Court level. So the question is that it will be at all levels of the judiciary? No. The pilot project that was supposed to happen was in the Delhi or Bombay High Court. So Delhi and Bombay High Court had to start the pilot project, and after that it will be mostly utilized for the Supreme Court only. Okay, do remember this. It stands for Supreme Court Portal for Assistance in Courts Efficiency. So Supreme Court's Portal for Assistance, I'll just write it down. Supreme Court's Portal for Assistance in Courts Efficiency. This is what SUPACE is. Okay, it will be helping the judges in bringing up all the relevant facts that are useful for them. Next question. Consider the following statements. Number 1. Samvedana telecounseling service has been developed for the mental health counseling for the medical personnel. Second, the Bal Swaraj portal aims to track the children who have lost any or both parents during the COVID-19 pandemic. Which of these given statements that you see on your screen is or are correct? The correct answer, as you would know in this question, is 2 only. The first statement is wrong, the second statement is correct. Now, why is the first statement wrong and what is it about? As you know, during the COVID pandemic, lakhs and lakhs of people lost their life. In fact, we are still debating what the data with when the WHO report also came out, and they said that many more people died in India. Anyway, so in the COVID-19 pandemic, there were a lot of cases in which the children lost their parents or the children lost their guardians. In some unfortunate cases, both the guardians, in some cases, one of the guardians. So the government of India, that is why, has been trying to help those children specifically with a lot of initiatives. For example, there have been initiatives taken from the government side under which the education expenses of those children will be taken care of by the government. Then there are also initiatives taken by the government under which these children will get certain amount of money when they grow 18 years old, and then the government will help them. So a lot of these initiatives have come up from the government of India side. Of those initiatives, one of those is this Samvedana telecounseling service. So the Samvedana telecounseling service that you actually see here is to support children who are affected during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is for the counseling of children only, not for the counseling of medical health personnel. So this is for the counseling of children only specifically. So especially the children who have, and not just the children who have lost their parents, even the children whose parents are positive, children who are anxious, who are stressful due to a lot of reasons. And there can be many reasons for that: not meeting friends, not going to school, not going outside, being forced to learn online. All these reasons have made or have increased a lot of anxiety amongst the students, and that is why all of them will be covered under this. Okay, so it's a free of cost service where a toll-free number has been given to the students under which these children can call this. The second statement is correct. The Bal Swaraj portal is to track the children who have lost any or both of their parents during the COVID-19 pandemic. So both of these initiatives, the Samvedana also and Bal Swaraj portal also, both of these are specifically taken keeping the children in mind. Okay. Next question. The Ayushman CAPF, that is Central Armed Police Force scheme, covers which of the following groups? The Border Security Force, Assam Rifles, the National Security Guard, and I left one, sorry, Sashastra Seema Bal. which of these are covered under the Ayushman CAPF? Now, this, I'm sure all of you are well aware of the Ayushman Bharat Yojana, under which medical insurance is given up to rupees 5 lakh. It's an offshoot of this Yojana only, that is the Ayushman CAPF, that is the Central Armed Police Forces. Which amongst these are covered? All of these are covered. BSF, SSB, some rifles, the National Security Guard, all of these are covered under the Ayushman CAPF scheme, or it is also called Hamara Jawan Ayushman. Now, as we know, the government of India specially takes care of the medical expenses and a lot of other expenses of the people who are working in the armed forces. But what happens is, a lot of times when the government makes such a scheme, those schemes are made for the people of the armed forces. Now, they are the ones who work under defense ministry. For example, for army, navy, air force, they do have those schemes. A lot of times what happens is that many of those schemes don't cover these kind of forces that come under the category of CAPF. Also remember that these forces, the CAPF, don't come under defense ministry. They come under home ministry. So they have also been covered under this particular scheme. Now the key features are that these are cashless schemes. Ayushman scheme or Ayushman Bharat scheme also is a cashless scheme, which includes OPD also. So the OPD expenses, etc. will also be covered. Now what is OPD? OPD is when you go and visit a doctor without having to be admitted in the hospital. So if you just go for a consultation, if you don't have to be admitted, if there's no operation, etc., fortunately that has to take place, those are OPD. Usually the OPD charges are not covered under most of the insurance schemes. Usually the insurance schemes will only give you certain money, or they will only reimburse your expenditure if you have to be admitted to the hospital or if you have to undergo some of the operations. Usually OPD charges are not covered, but this particular scheme will cover the OPD charges as well. Okay, so all these are covered under the Ayushman CAPF scheme. Next question. Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana falls under which of the following ministries? Ministry of Health, Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Now, as I told you in the very beginning when we started this session, that when you read about the government schemes, there are 3 or 4 aspects of the government scheme that you have to focus on. What did I tell you? First, the ministry or the department that is running the scheme. Secondly, the target audience of that scheme, who are they targeting exactly. And thirdly, if there is specific target that they have in their mind, let's say by 2030 we have to achieve this, by 2050 we have to achieve this, those kind of things. These kind of questions also can be seen in the prelims examination, where straight to the point the UPSC will ask you, tell us which ministry is under this. Now again, these might become slightly tricky. For example, I'll tell you what this scheme is. So Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana Kendra is when the doctor writes you a certain medicine that you have to take this medicine. Those are usually branded medicines, and when you go to the chemist or to the medical shop, those are pretty expensive. There are certain alternatives that are available, which are called generic. So I'll give you a very simple example. Usually when you have a headache, or usually when you have a pain in the body somewhere, a muscle pain, etc., you usually take paracetamol. Now paracetamol right now, it is not a medicine on which anyone has a patent, because it's a very old medicine. So thousands and lakhs of pharma companies make paracetamol. So there would be one company which would sell a strip of 10 tablets of paracetamol at rupees 60. Some other company might sell it at rupees 70. Some other might sell it at rupees 40. Because it is their brand, whatever they want to do. For example, the same shirt can be sold by, let's say, Louis Philippe at 2,500 rupees. The same shirt may be sold by Armani at 25,000 rupees. It might be the same shirt, but just the brand name is different. Similarly with medicines, the companies can sell it at whatever price. So let's say you go to the doctor will not write that you should have paracetamol. He will write a brand name. So let's say he says that you should go and have PCM 500. So PCM 500 is a brand name. When you go to medical store, if this is 70 rupees, you will have to pay 70 rupees for this. While the same thing for some other company, you could have bought it for 40, 30 rupees in fact. But you usually buy only that name which the doctor has written because you think that that is something unique. The alternative to this is generic medicines or generic drugs as you call them. Now generic medicines or generic drugs simply means that they are sold by the name paracetamol only, for example. They are not sold by any other brand name, and because of it they are very, very cheap, much cheaper. So for example, if you buy paracetamol at rupees 70, the same paracetamol on a generic brand or a brand which is not branding, it is selling it generic, can give it to you for 8 rupees or 9 or 10 rupees. That is the difference. So now under this scheme what happens is when you go to a doctor and doctor is writing or prescribing a medicine to you, the doctor will also have to write the salt or the ingredient, and you can then go to these kind of medical stores which are called Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana Kendra, means specific medical stores specially made, and for these kind of medicines they will have the stocks of all these medicines and you can buy it from them at a much cheaper cost. This is the entire scheme. Okay, now let's come back to the question. The question is under which particular ministry does it fall, and this is where it's slightly confusing. This is actually Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. Usually your first assumption would be that it would fall under Ministry of Health, right? That is the first assumption. But that is where you have to be more careful. Rather than assuming, it's always better to know more about this. So it is actually under the Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizer. If you actually see under this ministry, there is an organization called BPPI. This is the one that is running this particular scheme. BBPI here stands for Bureau of Pharma PSU of India. I'll write it here, Bureau of Pharma PSU of India. This works under Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers, and this is the government ministry which is responsible for running this particular scheme. Okay, do remember that. Next question is this. Consider the following statements with regards to the Academic Bank of Credit, that is the ABC, as envisaged in the National Education Policy. Number 1. Under the ABC, students will be given multiple entry and exit options. Second, it will also provide students with the flexibility to move between institutes while pursuing one degree or leave a course. Third, the ABC will accept the credit course document directly from the students for any course that they might be pursuing. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now I am very sure everyone has read a lot about the National Education Policy. It's a document that has a lot of new ideas. Of those new ideas that they have brought up, one of the ideas which I also found very interesting was this idea, Academic Bank of Credit. I'll give you a very simple example, okay. Let's assume I passed class 12th and now I think, because everyone said so, that engineering has the most scope. Engineering बहुत scope है. So everyone told me to go and pursue engineering. So let's assume that I entered a college, I took admission into a BTech course and I started studying engineering. Now let's assume after 1 year ends, after first year ends, now there can be a lot of things. Either I can continue in the second year, or let's say for some reason I am not well and I want to take a long break, or I am just not interested in pursuing it anymore. Okay? Or maybe I want to take a break, or I want to take a gap. Like you see in Hollywood movies, right? I want to go and explore life, I am taking a break. So in India, we don't have those kind of options, right? When you get your result of the first year, you do nothing and then you go and buy books of second year, you start studying. But what if I don't want to do that? What if I want to take a break of 6 months? Why? Maybe I want to pursue some other course. Maybe I want to learn French all of a sudden. Maybe I want to go somewhere, whatever. Right now, there is no provision for that. There is also no provision. Let's say I did my BTech of first year from a specific college, let's say XYZ college. Next year, let's assume I want to switch off college. Let's say I want to go to some other college and resume from second year. That is also not possible in today's scenario. This is where this concept of A, B, C comes into picture. Now what will it do? The idea is, let's assume that I passed class 12th, okay. After that I entered engineering college and I passed first year. When I pass first year, I will be given certain credits. You can understand credits as points, let's assume. So let's assume that at the end of first year, I'll be given 10 points or 10 credits. Okay. Now these credits in my name will be given to a kind of a bank which will be called Academic Bank of Credit. Okay. It will be kind of a bank. In a bank you deposit money, in this bank you deposit your credits. Now let's say I take a break of 1 year, I do nothing. Then after a gap of 1 year, I want to resume from where I left off. I want to resume from second year. Let's say I resume in the same college, or I want to go to some other college and get admission there. From there I can resume in the second year because I already have these 10 credits in my Academic Bank of Credit. The institution will check my name that, oh, this person has already done first year, he has 10 credit, now we can resume from the second year onwards. So number one, it will allow me to change institutes also, where the second institute can verify that yes, I had done my first year, because for doing just 1 year, I will not get any degree, right? You only get degree when you complete the entire course. So if I am only doing 1 year, I am not getting any degree. So I am only getting credits which can be checked by the second institute, number one. Second option is, let's assume I don't want to study further. At the end of 1 year, I am done. I'm thinking I'm done with engineering, I want to do something else. Anyways, Elon Musk has said that college degree is not necessary, he'll hire me. So let's say after first year of engineering, I don't want to do something else. I just want to withdraw these credit. Now, withdraw these credit means you can't withdraw it like something in your hand. Withdraw these credit means you will get a certificate of that much only, that you've studied here for first year, that can be called diploma. The degree might be much bigger, the degree might be, let's say 3 years or 4 years. You just studied for 1 year, so let's say you withdraw these credits, you ask the organization or the institute, please give me a diploma telling the world that I have done at least this much of the course. So this is how the Academic Bank of Credit will work. It's a wonderful idea. It will allow you to change institutes in between. It will allow you to take a break and then resume from where you have left. And it will also allow you that if you want to leave a course in between, you can do that without starting from zero. Because if I leave a 4-year engineering course after 3 years only, I will not get any degree right now. So I don't have anything to show to the world. But in this case, after first year if I leave, after second year if I leave, even if I leave after third year, in all these cases I will get certain kind of a certificate. Okay, now let's come back to this question. It will allow the students to have multiple entry and exit options. Absolutely correct. As I said, this is the entire idea. It will allow the students to enter and exit multiple times. Second, it will also provide students with flexibility to move between different institutes for 1 degree or leave a course. Absolutely right. This is what we discussed. That if you want to resume your studies from second year from some other institute, you can do that. Just show them this credit. Now the third statement. This bank will accept credit document directly from the students. No, the students cannot contact this bank and say, see, I have 10 more credits, 20 more. No. The institute where you are studying, they will directly deposit those credits or transfer those credits in your name to that particular bank. So students, myself, I will not have any contact with them. I will not be in touch with them. It is not in my hands to withdraw the credit. Sorry, it is not in my hands to deposit any credit as such. The institute will deposit it in my name. It is not in my hands. So that is why the third statement is wrong here. First and the second statements are correct. So the answer here is A. Okay, the answer here is A. Third statement is wrong. And this brings us to the end of the session. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a lot of new things today regarding the government schemes and the government initiatives. Do join us tomorrow as well. We are continuing with the government schemes at 7:30 p.m. sharp. Also, if you have just joined in, do like this session, do subscribe to our YouTube channel of BYJU'S IAS, and do follow the entire course. The entire schedule of this ongoing Target Prelims 2022 crash course is given in the description of the video. Do check that out. Every single day till 21st of May, we will have these classes at 7:30 p.m. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, 7:30 p.m.